right, all you cursed out there. It's time for our special Labor Day edition. The Labor Day classic, if you would, of the Curse of Politics podcast. Here with Jenni Byrne in her Hamilton Tiger Cats jersey. How are you, Jenni?
Great, David.
I'm not so great. The Riders did not put up a classic yesterday in Regina.
No, sorry about that.
No. Anyway, good luck to the Ticats today, I guess. Although I cheer for the Argos since I live in Toronto. Scott, how are you?
Not great. Imperfect. I got a story to tell you guys. My car was stolen on Friday night. Yeah. I woke up, went outside, car was gone. And your brain refuses to believe this information for about 45 minutes.
And where had Will taken it?
Well, that's exactly what I thought, right? Which of my no-good, Nick, substance-fueled children took my car and left it parked at Earl Bales? But no, it's a thief. Everybody in the neighborhood had their cars rifled and stuff goofed around, and my car was just plain old gonzies. They have something called a fob breaker that lets them get into cars, which I won't explain here, but I am working on another podcast where that's all that we're talking about. So,
well, keep your voice down, Scott, because Charles and Andrea Byrne and their two children, Ava and Matthew, are sleeping downstairs right now.
That's too bad, because I'd like to wake up Bird. I don't, with the old hand in warm water trick, personally, would be my go-to.
Oh, shit. All right, Nick, Taylor Vasey from Politico. How are you, brother?
I'm good. I have a mini story to tell you, which is that yesterday I spent a good chunk of the day at a cottage in the Kawarthas trying to save next summer by scraping the future moths off all the trees. Have you heard about this? This is the hottest trend. Trying to save the property by scraping everything into a bucket of warm, soapy water. So I'm feeling great. Real labor, you know.
There's a metaphor for the campaign in there somewhere.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a metaphor for the campaign in there somewhere.
Exactly.
So it's been a couple of days since we all gathered to talk. Nick, what's been going on?
I feel like you guys have some opining to do on guns and various party positions on those particular implements. The weekend seemed to be filled with just all manner of rhetoric. I turned off the internet for a day and I came back and liberal Twitter was in a bit of a tizzy, feeling really good about perhaps the wedge issue they found that will wedge better than the other wedges. I don't want to get too much into it because I imagine you guys will, but I do want to mention that we also in the playbook today have Michael Wernick at the top, and my colleague Zian Lam talked to him late last week just about the state of the world, revisiting his comments on the social media vomitorium from 2019, which feels like a millennium ago. And one thing that he said that we're going to keep reporting out, I think, is that, and this may be well known in certain circles, is that 24 Sussex Drive, he would recommend anybody who wins this election, including a couple of guys who haven't won elections before, not to move into that place because he says it's not safe for their families. And that was his sort of segue into talking about polarization and some of the stuff that he thinks we're seeing on the campaign trail that is another manifestation of, what he calls the body politic turning towards negative things. So pretty interesting words from the guy.
It was weird. It was weird.
No, but that's weird. Why would, I don't understand. Aren't they renovating 24 Sussex? If it's a construction site, it would be Trudeau and his family haven't lived there in 6 years. So I don't even understand what those comments mean.
So what I had heard and read at the time when Trudeau decided to move to the other place was that there were a number of things that had to happen at 24 Sussex to make it livable.
Because the prime ministers up until November of 2015 weren't living there comfortably.
I'm just saying that was the reporting. And there was always a footnote that said also there needed to be security upgrades, and they would run into the millions. So there was always kind of a passing mention. I didn't realize it amounted to the level of intensity that a former clerk of the Privy Council would now be saying he'd counsel against people moving there. So Make it the words that you want.
That seems, I'll be honest, that's I will call bullshit on that. Having been in 24 Sussex, probably the last out of all of us sitting here, it wasn't like it was like falling the fuck apart. It was actually a pretty nice place. So I think if that is the biggest thing that Michael Wernick can add to the political conversation in Canada, then it's kind of a pretty sad day.
Well, I worked with Michael, and I like him fine. I thought it was a weird way to enter the campaign, that social media has become so virulent, that society's become so polarized, that our politics are so toxic, that a prime minister dare not move into 24 Sussex, because even after it's reconstructed and rebuilt, it may not be secure as a matter of like personal integrity, like you may be attacked by extremists. Like, I just thought it was a goddamn really strange, not in the headlines kind of thought.
Well, it
made for good reading.
They really should they really should at a minimum replace the yellow couch in the living room that I spilled 1 Caesar, 2 rum and cokes, and maybe there's a hash Goldburn on there too.
That's David. That's
Nick,
that became the cat's couch.
You act like nothing's wrong, Jenny. I'm telling you, that is the coldest sun porch I've ever sat on. And you know, that's how you think a G7 leader should be forced to exist. We got different takes on the world.
Nick, are we the only people working today, or are the leaders out there?
A couple leaders are out there. O'Toole's the easy one. He's in Ottawa. Jagmeet Singh, any guesses where Jagmeet Singh is on Labor Day? I'm just going to say it.
Moscow? Is he in Moscow? I bet the son of a bitch, the commie's in Moscow, isn't he?
There's a football game in the city where he's at. He's going to Hamilton, and Trudeau and Chrystia Freeland are going to go just a little bit east of Hamilton. Something tells me they're going to end up in that city on Labor Day, but they're in Welland, which is a 3-way race last 2 elections, and depending on which poll aggregator you're addicted to most, the Conservatives are in the lead there. But either way, it's shaping up to be something. So Vance Badaway is the incumbent, and a couple of like a New Democrat and a Conservative want to unseat him. And kind of the interesting twist is that the guy who used to be the MP for the NDP in Niagara Centre is now running in Hamilton Mountain, where the NDP's Scott Duvall retired. And so that's where Jagmeet Singh is today. He's in Malcolm Allen's potential future riding. Canadian politics is a village. People just sort of play musical chairs sometimes, I guess.
But people are in Hamilton a lot in this campaign.
People are in Hamilton a lot in this campaign. 5 seats. They want them all. Yeah.
And obviously they're in play. All right, Nick, thank you very much. It's good to see you. Thanks for getting up on Labor Day morning to talk to us.
I'm not going to go to sleep. I'm not going to go to sleep immediately at all. Don't worry about it. I'll see you tomorrow. I'll be listening at 8:15 a.m.
No Labor Day.
All right, and it's our daily shout out. First of all, read the Politico playbook. It's great. It's fun. It's got all the news you need. And the second thing is, Politico, get that man on the road.
Oh, yeah.
Get that man on the road.
Take him to Hamilton. That's where the action's at.
Absolutely. Put him in Hamilton. So I guess we should go to Frankie.
Please.
And EKOS's numbers today, which differ from the other numbers that are out there, in the sense that he's not finding as many Liberals as the other pollsters are. So Frank has, on the 4-day roll, Conservative 34, Liberals 29, NDP 21, Greens 4, People's Party 7, Bloc Québécois 5. So he's got the Conservatives pretty much flatlined from where they've been. Momentum stopped, but not receding in any significant way. And the Liberals, their vote not really coming back. Rising People's Party vote, rising NDP vote. So, I don't know. I know it's different from everybody else. Did either of you do anything over the weekend? I look to you, Jenny, in particular, to give you a different kind of feel for the campaign.
I didn't do anything specifically. I wasn't on the doors this weekend. I did talk to a fair number of people. I think that The racists, I think, are a lot. This is where I would be wanting to see regional and riding polls, because in a lot of the ridings I've spoken to, it's very tight, and they're feeling much better on the doors than what they did a month ago. But I'm still not sure in terms of local ID. I'm not sure in terms of local volunteers. Where we stand in terms of what I see out there for the Liberals. And I think that this election, probably more so than a lot that we've seen in the past, could come down to the riding by riding dogfights. And it's going to depend on which ridings, which campaigns have the resources to be able to get their vote out, and if they've actually identified enough vote. Like it's a bad feeling going into advanced polls and E-Day, knowing that you don't have, even if you got 100% of the vote you have identified out, even that wouldn't matter in terms of winning. So I think that I think it's a lot tighter riding by riding than what I think that the overall national numbers would show, which is kind of where we were the last election.
Right. The concept of perception versus reality has always fascinated me. Take Billy Joel, for example. While not considered a badass rock and roller, the perception is he's a moderate-ass rock and roller. The reality is Billy Joel is a Broadway show tuner with an ounce of true rock instinct in him. Now, I'm going to guess most of you think our presenting sponsor, TELUS, is a telecom company, a network carrier. The reality is they're a technology company. Check that, a global technology leader, one with a social purpose. Here's what I mean. More than a dozen years ago, TELUS began investing and innovating in digital technology to revolutionize the healthcare industry. Since then, TELUS Health has become Canada's biggest and frankly most important IT healthcare provider. So, 13 years in the making, and never more crucial than during the pandemic. Virtual healthcare became so important for Canadians wanting to stay safe, doctors trying to care for their patients, and for the hospitals and care centers managing through an unprecedented health crisis. On top of that, TELUS was a critical player in the vaccine booking rollout, and they're transforming the way community healthcare solutions are delivered through their digitally connected Health for Good mobile clinics. It's precisely these kinds of investments that reveal how TELUS is different from the other telcos. They haven't spent their money buying sports teams or doubling down on media properties. Instead, TELUS invests in key industries like healthcare and agriculture, with the singular vision of innovating and leveraging technology to improve outcomes for Canadians, to do some good. We're going to talk more about TELUS as a technology company with a social purpose in the next couple of weeks. But for now, you can learn more at TELUS.com. So let's talk about what happened over the weekend in the gun issue, as it seems to be the issue of the weekend. I'll start by saying that I did my weekly focus group on Saturday through the Looking Glass. I'll be out later today. And I guess one of the things that's relevant to this discussion about guns is that people had understood very much that there was a change in the dynamic of the campaign and that the Conservatives were leading. And so people were very much in the mode of starting to think about the Conservatives winning and starting to think about O'Toole as Prime Minister and assess that. That was not something that they were really thinking seriously about as a prospect early on in the campaign. It was what would the size of the Liberal victory be. But now people were thinking about the Conservatives winning. And one of my takeaways was that the last 2 weeks of the campaign was going to be in part a referendum on O'Toole and whether he could hold up under that scrutiny and continue to be the moderate, sensible guy that people thought they were seeing. So then this gun issue would already started to take off. Then it takes off. Is it damaging? And if so, what is damaging about it?
Scott, I'll let you go first.
I think it's damaging. I mean, it probably mobilizes some of the anti-conservative vote. It probably takes some of the, there's no consequences to voting conservative. It takes some of that shine off of O'Toole and ridings, certainly in urban ridings, maybe in some suburban ridings and so forth, where you get a lot of anxiety about gang shootings. I'm thinking of 905 and Surrey's and that kind of place where you see that kind of reporting happening every 3 days. And so maybe it has some traction there. I think the most important thing about it, though, is that for the first time, you've seen the alignment that you're looking for as a campaign. If you're the Liberals, you see like a headline saying O'Toole flip-flops on guns. You see, or under attack on guns or whatever, right? You see tour events that are picking up that message and are getting reported by the media about that message. You see O'Toole being asked at his events about that message, and you've brought out paid media that's prying away on all that stuff. So I think all that's good for the Liberals. It certainly has put steam in their stride. Frank's numbers don't show the results yet, but it is the kind of thing from an architecture standpoint you want to do as a campaign. So I think all that's good. I think the one big warning I would pose to the Liberals is you ride the guns thing as far as you can. You've now gotten the guy to flip-flop. I think that's an even bigger reward, because the warning that I would give to the Liberal campaign is do not make the mistake of thinking this is about guns, right? That's, guns has been the salad course. O'Toole is the meal. Now go eat him up, right? The meal is, this is a guy who'll say anything to anyone. He said this to the gun lobby. Now he's under pressure and he doesn't like the look of how the media are putting questions to him. So he reverses course on that. We've seen him say that on all sorts of different issues. You saw him courting social conservatives as a true blue during the leadership. Then he switched to become the most, moderate conservative leader we've seen since, I don't know, Arthur Meehan, for Christ's sake. So I think that, I'll say anything. I think that will stick. So ride guns as long as possible, but you've got to figure out ways guns is the skeleton key that unlocks the damaging character definition of O'Toole that you want people and voters to understand in the next 2 weeks. So don't think it's about guns. Guns is an example. It's not the rule.
Yeah, Scott, I agree with you on there. That's definitely the conservatives' Achilles heel. When the Liberals released these ads on Friday, I guess it was, I was like, oh, if it's just guns, you guys don't there's no way that you're going to be able to ride it out. And then I saw how the Conservatives responded to it, which I have to say was a little bit shocking, because it shouldn't have been a surprise that this was going to be an issue. Like when you're doing your narrative and you're doing, them on us, this would be in the top three of what to be ready for. And what was even more shocking is how yesterday kind of rolled out. And so in terms of what you want to call the hot button issues, this is one that I believe is the easiest to defend because it's the right thing. Gun crime has risen 20% since Justin Trudeau has been prime minister. Lametti, the government earlier this year brought in a bill to curb mandatory minimum sentences for a lot of gun crimes, including possession of restricted firearms, ammunition. So they've actually that's something to put out. Your buddy Ralph Goodale, when he brought in Bill C-71 back in, I guess it was 2017 or 2018, he didn't even touch these classifications of rifles, so of guns. So this is something that's completely defensible. And I have no idea why yesterday Aaron walked on stage and just ate himself whole, because it's not just you have Trudeau doing the typical dog whistle politics of having a giant machine gun as his platform or as his podium stand yesterday. So you have the dog whistle politics happening. You have a very defensible position, and then Aaron walked out and said, "I'm not going to roll back the restrictions." Something I campaigned in my leadership with, something I've said for the last 10 months, and something that's written in my platform. I'm just going to back down on that, and so it's literally the worst of all worlds, because now you have a bunch of people within the party who may have voted for him on that issue in the leadership and may not. But to Scott's point, it leaves a very bad taste in one's mouth in terms of the direction that Aaron's taking the party. It's a very big gamble. I would say that yesterday, the gamble for Aaron, the Hail Mary that he's throwing, is that if he doesn't win, he is going to have a very hard time staying on as leader of the party at this point.
Yeah, he probably thought he would anyway. But you have shown the way for my question, which is, on balance, Canadians agree with the conservative perspective on crime management more than the liberal perspective on that. And the only area in which that is not true is guns and gun control. where more Canadians agree with the Liberal perspective than the Conservative perspective, generally. So why don't they return fire? There's an old Keith Daviesism that I read somewhere, that when somebody says to you, you're fat, you don't say, no, I'm not. You say, so what? You're bald. And so when the Liberals bring up guns, why don't the Conservatives say, oh, you want to talk crime? Let's tango, right? And start talking about mandatory minimums and start talking about all the other areas in which Canadians are far more comfortable with the Conservative position on crime than the Liberal one.
Didn't they do that, David? Didn't they do that? Wasn't there an event, I can't remember if it's Friday or Saturday, wasn't there an event, I think on Friday, about crime? And the problem is they brought that strategy. It was
a gang event, yeah.
Right. So they brought that strategy, but their nerve broke and they bailed on their own message, and then spent 3 days deciding whether they're going to flip or flop, and they did both at the end.
Well, David, I agree with you. That's why I brought up earlier what I would have done if I was the Conservatives in terms of the Liberals gutting mandatory minimums, and in terms of gun crime being up 20%, gun crime being up in Canada 20%, especially in Toronto. There's not a day where we don't wake up to 1010 or CP24 telling us there's another shooting overnight or multiple shooting. We've at this point in the year, it's the highest level of gun crime in Toronto that we've ever had, and we're only at August, so we've actually beat records. So David, I'm with you. That's why I brought up all that stuff. If I was the Tories, I would be doing nothing but that. I would be going, Justin Trudeau, you and your government have no fucking leg to stand on in terms of this. Under your watch in the last 6 years, boom, 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 boom. And I'm not sure why I'm really not sure why that wasn't when Aaron walked onto stage yesterday. I'm not sure that why that wasn't the message.
Right.
Well, the Conservatives better pick their game up. I mean, we did on Friday, we did our hey yous, and my hey you was, hey, Conservatives, you're about to enter in a whole new arena in terms of scrutiny and pushback. That's happening. And round one did not go to them. So if you're them, you have to say to yourself,
they lost the whole weekend, as far as I can tell. At least they got no message out of their own this weekend.
That's right. For sure that happened. Now, I don't know if it will show up in Frank's numbers or not. I mean, if it doesn't, I don't know what the Liberals would do. But it was a bad weekend from a campaign management, message management standpoint for the Conservatives. What you have to think is, okay, guys, well, round two is coming. I mean, the Liberals have telegraphed pretty categorically where they're going. I mean, their ads are hitting the air. They've got a roster of issues that all speak to your soft spots. So when abortion arises this week, or, pick from the menu, are you going to do any better on it, or are you going to flail again? And I think it will be interesting, because they had to know this was coming, and they didn't do a very good job of defending themselves.
Okay, so let's switch our sights.
I just want to say, it's not like the Liberals have had a fantastic week. They finally did what they should have done before the filing deadline, and when they first found out about it, they finally Sanny resigned, or which he got resigned because apparently the media say there's further allegations that they found out. It's shocking that someone that would have so many allegations against them had some that were unknown at the time. So that's a seat they've given up. That's Kitchener Centre is now not in the Liberal column, and it probably would have been if they had a different candidate, if they'd done the right thing 2 weeks ago.
Testify.
Right. And Trudeau pulls a Ford. Trudeau goes, my God, this is really frustrating to me to watch this thing unfold. Like, whoever's in charge here should really fucking have done a better job of this.
Yeah, I love those. I love those moments. Golly, I'm astonished as anyone.
Since Confederation, owning a home has been part of the Canadian dream. For most people, that dream is much more than just a monthly mortgage payment. A home is where we create our fondest memories and where we can truly be ourselves. For too many, especially young adults, that reality is out of reach, and it's getting worse. The good news is our original sponsor, the Ontario Real Estate Association, or REA for short, has a plan to save the Canadian dream of home ownership. It includes lowering costs for first-time buyers, ending money laundering in the real estate market, and cutting years of red tape that is standing in the way of more affordable homes for families. The REA plan will lay the foundation for a future where all people can find a place to call home. When we support the dreams of all of us who want to own a home, we're building healthier families, stronger communities, and a safer, more secure future for all. Read their plan at orea.com/affordable homes. So let's talk about Trudeau for a second, because I want to go back to my focus groups and the data here. So whether it's Frank's data or whether it is anybody else's data, the Liberals are having trouble getting liftoff beyond 30% or thereabouts. And they have found their sea legs on attacking O'Toole and the Conservatives a little bit. But I'm wondering about the other end of the scale and people voting for them as opposed to people turning off against the Conservatives. And, it really felt in my focus group like people are reluctant to reward Trudeau for this election. And no matter how many doubts they might have, it is still hard for them to not want to take a pound of flesh out of him. Now, my theory on this has been, and I've had to work with some candidates who had baggage and had things that they were carrying around, and my feeling has always been, if the public is determined to take a pound of flesh out of you, give it to them before voting day. And I don't know really what I'm suggesting here by Trudeau, but I'm wondering whether he doesn't need to say or do something that gives people permission to like him enough to cast a vote for him again.
Are they self-aware enough? Because what I view when I watch their campaign, especially, they kind of got their, as you said, David, their sea legs back a bit this weekend, is a campaign that just doesn't was actually shocked that people might not like him. He had 20 or 30 protesters out, idiots hurling obscenities, and they're trying to say it's the same as his dad who braved the St. John Baptiste Day parade, where people were actually whipping bottles and throwing shit at him. You can't compare the two. His old man had the stomach for it. Trudeau and his people don't seem to they seem completely surprised and overwhelmed that there might be people out there that don't like him. And don't think that he is cool and witty and fun. It's not like what it was in 2015. And I think they'd have to actually admit that to themselves, David, if they were going to have some kind of moment within the campaign that said, it's okay to not like me personally and vote for me kind of thing.
They're more in the zone of, it's really hard for us to make this pivot because people admire Trudeau so much, they think of him in a certain way and they don't want to see him go negative. I mean, that I think has been more their mentality as opposed to we've got to give people permission to vote for us by acknowledging a shortcoming. We'll see. Countering that is that Trudeau, when his back has been against the wall, has been willing to do the full grovel with effect over the course of his campaign. But of course, these things, it is a law of diminishing returns, right? The fourth time you do that is a little bit less resonant than the first. I think two things, David, I guess. I mean, this campaign, and I know these comparisons are always lame, but we've all talked and others have talked about how this campaign resembles 2004 in some ways. And I think another comparison is now we're in a zone in the last 2 weeks where you mostly want it to be about the other guy. And we are in other guy territory. What's worked about the Liberal campaign for the last 3 days is finally people aren't talking about why did you call the election and what's wrong with you and all. It's finally been about the other guy. So the Liberals are getting everybody talking about O'Toole and poking at him and making the other guy. The Conservatives will want to play that off the other way around and shift it back to the other guy and make it back about Trudeau sometime before then. And you want to basically conceal the fact that you're leading, particularly if the Liberals, if you ever get yourself back competitive, you want to conceal that fact from the public for fear they'll say, well, hang on, I am not going to reward you, just as you said. So I think first thing is you got to drive home the other guy thing. I think if you're the Liberals, before you can even have the luxury of considering some kind of offering to the public, you need to make certain that you've driven home the inadequacies of O'Toole. So I wouldn't get off that wicket for a while. And then, I don't know, I hear what you're saying, David, but I think it's going to be really difficult for this campaign at this point, not just because of whether they would consider it internally, but I think even as a play, I worry it would look so inauthentic and phony and contrived if he was to say, listen, I now here in this final stretch want to acknowledge that people are upset with me for calling this election. And he can't do an apology for calling the election, I don't think, at this point. So the question is, how does he get around to an acknowledgement of fallibility that is sufficient that people say, okay, well, I guess I can stomach voting for him? And my guess is it's got to be more about riffing off of these issues and say, look, I know that I've disappointed some people by calling this election, and I know I've disappointed some people by not coming through on, everything that maybe you had your hopes on. But it's these issues, these people, and the things that are ahead of us that we've got to focus on, and this is what I'm all about. I don't know. I don't have it mapped out in my mind, but I think it's going to be really hard for him to just go to the mic and say, listen, I think it's time for apologies now, and I wish to apologize so that you can then come back to hugging me. Very hard.
Yeah. All right, listen, the time has flown by. It's time for our daily curses. Who's got a curse today?
Well, my curse is going to the Conservative campaign, and my curse is, guys, get your fucking shit together. This is a huge week. It is not just the fact that we had a really bad, choppy weekend on guns, that we see Maxime Bernier and the PPC kind of having very large events. He had hundreds and hundreds of people out at a giant rally in Kelowna over the weekend. It's not just that. It's you've got two debates, which is going to captivate most of what the central campaign is doing for a good 3 days. But most importantly, you're also getting into advanced poll GOTV, which is what if I was in their war room right now, what my entire sole focus would be on. I might hurl my opinion in terms of some communications advice, but what I would be doing right now is solely focused on working with, especially any target ridings that you have, getting those voters out to vote this weekend if you haven't already gotten them out to vote by mail or special ballot.
Cool. Scott?
My hey you is to the Liberal campaign, and it is this.
It's a curse on Monday. It's not a hey you. It's a hey you on Friday. Mr. Pinsent was not here today.
All right.
It's a curse.
Oh, golly gee, curse me. Gosh. My curse is to the Liberal campaign, and the curse is this. This week, people will they will conclude what they think of these leaders. The debates will be that moment where 3 days after those two debates, they're going to say, all right, I've got a settled in point of view on these people. And I think you face a really big strategic choice in the debates, and it speaks to the last chunk that we were just talking about. It's going to be tempting to make the debate entirely an attack on O'Toole, but I think that if you're the Liberals, you've got to spend at least as much attention to reestablishing yourself, if you're Trudeau, in a positive way with Canadians. Not a positive way, but in an admirable way, in a way that people can say, oh, okay, I can like that guy. So you've got to figure out a strategy whereby you can get your licks in running up and running after the debate. But I think in the debate, you got to pay some attention to the repair job that needs to be done on the Trudeau brand.
Yeah, well, I'll piggyback off that with my curse, which is also to the Liberal campaign, which is to say that what I heard in my focus group again on Saturday was that the Liberal offering has just melted into a pot of money. And that all people know about the Liberals is that they're spending. It's creating an economic vulnerability, particularly among men. And it has left with the outcomes aren't what people are thinking about. The money's what people are thinking about. So I'm delighted that the Liberals have gone negative with their paid. They should continue to be hard negative with their paid. But I think Trudeau needs to convince people that he's going to deliver a better outcome. And I think Trudeau needs to get more positive in his own messaging and sell Canadians on the fact that he's going to make a positive difference. And I wouldn't try to sell that whole 39,000 point agenda anymore. I would pick one or two things and just try to drill one or two things home over the course of the last 2 weeks of the campaign. All right, that's our show for today.
Car theft. It should be about car theft and how he's going to correct it. Because I'm telling you right now, there's an insurance adjuster and a guy whose name rhymes with snot bleed who are right now a little bit wound up on this matter. So,
all right, all of you cursed. We'll see you again tomorrow morning. At this time, I want to thank our presenting sponsor, TELUS, and our sponsor, Aurea, the Ontario Real Estate Association. I want to thank, obviously, Frank Graves and EKOS for their data, Nick Taylor-Vasey and Politico, and I want to thank Jenni and Scott for being my friends today again. Take care, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow morning.